Assalamu alaikum class. Today we are going to discuss excitation contraction coupling, mechanism of skeletal muscle contraction. So this picture, this is to give you an orientation. We usually start learning about the muscle from the level of the sarcomere. And there is no orientation of where that is within a muscle itself. So let's look at this. This is a typical muscle, maybe a biceps. And if you cut it in half, you will notice that connective tissue is separating portions of it. And these are called fasciculi. The ladies who deal with mutton or beef when they're cooking will have seen these with the naked eye. You can see the fasciculi in a muscle. And each of these fasciculus is actually composed of many muscle fibers surrounded by connective tissue. And each muscle fiber, this long thing, for example, if this is the biceps, starting from here till here will be one muscle fiber, and this whole thing is one cell, but it's a multicellular, it's a multinucleated cell. And this, you can see it in this diagram. This muscle fiber has basically the muscle fibrils, myofibrils inside the cytoplasm, just filling the cytoplasm. Of course, in between these muscle fibrils, you have your mitochondria and other essential organelles which are required in a cell. But essentially, they fill up the cell. And the nuclei are also present around them. Now they have taken out one myofibril from this muscle cell, the myocyte, which is the muscle fiber. And each of these myofibrils is one fibril in continuity, but in itself is made up of 3-4 types of filaments, thick filaments and thin filaments, which have a certain arrangement. So over here, if you look with the naked eye, it is seen that some parts of this myofibril are dark, as in dark bands are present, and then light bands are present. And if we make that view larger, then we can see that dark bands are actually those places where fibers are overlapping, so that a darker effect is created. And where there are single fibers, there's no overlapping of fibers, lighter bands are produced. So comparing this enlarged view with the myofibril, this line which you see over here in the lighter band is this Z line within the I band. I band is the lighter band, and within that is the line which is actually the Z line. And this larger band, which is the A band, can be seen over here between the two I bands. And in the middle of this larger band, the A band is a line called the M line. And M line is also surrounded by a slight light area, which is the H band or the H zone. So if we look at this even more closely, this is your Z line. And Z line is that connective tissue structure which is actually attaching the actin filaments on both sides. These thin filaments are overlapping with myosin filaments, which are called the thick filaments. The part where they are overlapping is a darker part, and that is called the A band. There is this slight part just near the Z line where the thin filaments are not overlapping any thick filaments, and those are the parts which appear lighter on microscopy, and these are the I bands, in the middle of which is the Z line. And in the middle of the A band is the M line. M line is that connective tissue structure which is attaching myosin filaments or the thick filaments on both sides. And the diagram looking at these filaments at an even closer magnification. So you can see these are like stacked up matchsticks, except that there are two heads of this these matchsticks, which are kind of angled away from the rest of the body. And they overlap each other and form a thick filament. And each of these stalks has 2 heads, right? 2 myosin heads with each of these thick filament stalks. And this is the only composition of the thick filament. Myosin filaments constitute the thick filaments. The thin filament is composed of 3 different types of proteins. Let's look at the myosin molecule close up. So this is one myosin molecule, and this molecule is composed of 2 protein molecules. The final myosin molecule is composed of 2 myosin proteins which are wound around each other. Each of them have a tail and a head. The tails again wind around each other and form this twisted structure. This twisted structure is not straight. It goes on straight, and that is where it stacks up with other myosin molecules, but then it bends at an angle, which is called the hinge. And so at this point, it can move. So there are 2 points on this straight protein where the myosin molecule is actually allowing mobility. One is at this hinge. So it can move at this hinge like the arm can move at the elbow. And then the heads can move as well, like the wrist allows this fist to move on the forearm. So these are the 2 points where there are hinges. And then there are these myosin heads. You can see that there are 2 myosin heads for each myosin molecule. Because these 2 fibers, the tails will wind around to make one stalk, but the 2 heads act separately. Each of these heads has 2 sites. You can see a yellow globule over here, this yellow circle and the green circle. The yellow circle is where the myosin ATPase site, which means this is where ATP will bind. And since this site has ATPase activity, when ATP will bind this site, ATP will break down and produce ADP and phosphate, and the head will absorb the energy which is produced as a result. And on this side is the actin binding site, and this part of the head will bind to the actin. Let's take a look at how these are arranged. So you can see all these myosin molecules, they line alongside each other to form this thick filament. At the first hinge, the rest of the stalk will kind of protrude out of the main myosin filament, and the head can be seen. And like I said before, the head is also flexible on the stalk. And since this stalk and this head binds to the next filament, which is the actin filament. So this whole structure, the head and this part of the flexible part of the stalk, it acts like a bridge connecting the thick and thin filaments. So it's like a cross bridge. That's why it's called a cross bridge, from where, each actin molecule is not a structure with a tail and a head like myosin. These are actually globular structures, like billiard balls or ping pong balls. And each of them have a circular attachment site for the myosin cross bridge. These are now they will align like a necklace, beads in a necklace, and form one string, and then 2 strings will twist around each other, and you find a helix kind of structure is formed, and this is called the actin helix. This actin helix will have along each of its turns a tropomyosin-troponin complex. There is a tropomyosin, which is like 2 filaments again wound around each other, and this will cover the actin sites, binding sites, and along the ends of the troponin will be the along the ends of the tropomyosin will be the troponin attachments, and troponin will be acting like a switch to remove the tropomyosin from the active sites on actin whenever there is the necessary stimulus. So next, now when there is excitement, and what do I mean by excitement? I have decided to bend my arm. So the motor area of my brain will send impulses down the motor neurons, down the pyramidal tracts into the spinal cord. Motor neurons will be activated, which supply the skeletal muscle. At the neuromuscular junction, there will be activity, and action potential will spread along the nerve membrane and the T tubules, and there will be release of calcium inside the sarcoplasm. That is the key, release of calcium. That calcium binds over here, these purple dots. Calcium binds troponin. You can see the configuration of troponin has changed. Over here, it was a closely knit, closely snuggled 3 balls, and over here, it has become different. It has got configuration change has occurred. Since it is attached to tropomyosin, when it changes its configuration, it also pulls on the tropomyosin. And when tropomyosin is pulled off actin molecules, the actin active sites are exposed. There is a natural affinity of myosin heads for the actin binding sites. So immediately the myosin will bind the actin. As soon as this takes place, there will be a forward stroke, and I will shortly discuss its mechanism, how that takes place. The first step, myosin cross bridge binds to actin molecule. And obviously this is a cycle. We have to start from one point. This is obviously has occurred after calcium has entered and everything, but we're talking about an activity is taking place in a muscle. So all these things will be going on like a circle. So we start from one point. Myosin cross bridge binds to the actin molecule. As soon as that takes place, there is a power stroke which is triggered. This binding acts like a trigger. And this is I'm sure most of you already understand this. But for me, this was the most fascinating part of understanding the basic concept. So just imagine this for a moment. You used ATP or energy to put the the slingshot back at a certain position. So you used this ATP to make potential energy. Now this energy is stored in this slingshot. And the releasing of the thumb is equivalent to actin and myosin binding together. So what happens is that when ATP is utilized, hydrolyzed, the myosin molecule, it moves back in a cocked position, just like the slingshot is right now moved back in a cocked position. Now, when you will release the thumb, then it will automatically move forward in a power stroke. And the equivalent of that in skeletal muscle is when calcium will enter and the actin binding sites are uncovered, myosin will be attracted to its binding site on actin. At that point will be equivalent to the trigger, of releasing the thumb. And the stored potential energy will be used for a forward stroke. So this is important to understand that ATP is not used for the forward stroke. ATP was actually used to bring the myosin heads back into the cocked position, to detach it from the previous cycle and bring it back to the cocked position as potential energy. So in the cocked position, ATP and ADP and phosphate are binding the myosin head. And the energy is stored as potential energy. Heads will bind the myosin. Then it will act as a trigger or the release of the slingshot, and power stroke will take place, and ADP and phosphate will be released. This myosin head will bind a fresh ATP, and it will go into the cocked position just like the slingshot. It will hydrolyze ATP and use that energy as potential energy, stored potential energy. When the condition arises in terms of calcium entering, it will automatically bind actin, and then the trigger will be not releasing of the thumb in this case, but this binding of actin and myosin, and a power stroke will take place, right? So this is how, so if suddenly ATP finishes, like in death, what will be affected? Plasmic reticulum is encircling, is like a, क्या कहना चाहिए, net sleeve around every myofibril. It is surrounding the myofibrils like a net sleeve. But at the point where the cell membrane dips in to form the T tubule, and that is a point between A and I band. Between A band and I band are T tubules present, which are simply invaginations of the cell membrane, so that not just the peripheral myofibrils, but the internal myofibrils can also be exposed to extracellular fluid. And around the T tubules, the sarcoplasmic reticulum becomes expanded to form cisterns. So one T tubule and cisterns on both sides. This is often referred to in some books as a triad. What happens at the triad is important. And from postgraduate point of view, this is something you need to keep in mind. When action potential reaches the T tubules, after neuromuscular junction is activated, action potential spreads along the membrane, it reaches the T tubules. Inside the T tubules are dihydropyridine receptors, special receptors which are physically linked to some corresponding receptors on the cisterns of sarcoplasmic reticulum. And those receptors are ryanodine receptors. Because of the action potential, these dihydropyridine receptors are physically attached to the openings of ryanodine receptors. So if they tug along, the ryanodine receptors will open. So what happens when action potential reaches along the T tubules? The dihydropyridine receptors will undergo conformational change. But when they undergo conformational change, they were physically attached to the ryanodine receptor. They will pull on the ryanodine receptor doors, or their protein molecules which are closing the opening of the channels. And they will cause the opening of these ryanodine receptors, and these ryanodine receptors are actually calcium channels. Calcium will enter over here. This calcium has come out, and then this will bind troponin. Troponin will be the switch. It will tug away the tropomyosin. Now they are already attracted to each other like magnets, the myosin and actin. They will get attached to each other. This trigger will act like the releasing of the thumb on the slingshot, and there will be a power stroke of myosin, and muscle contraction will take place. And as long as calcium is present, troponin will stay out of the way and will make tropomyosin stay out of the way, and actin and myosin will keep on attaching to each other and keep on contracting. It's only when calcium supply will be stopped, and that calcium supply will be stopped when the action potential stops. And that action potential stops is when we have actually decided to stop moving, right? That is when this contraction will stop, and the muscle will come back to its relaxed state.